I just want to let you know that I'm recording this webinar so that we can share it with folks who are overseas and not able to join us today. So we've got a couple folks online with us, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Julie Kunselman, and I am the leader of research and development here at Studer Education. My background is in higher ed, and I was also a K-12 teacher through Teach for America right out of college, and then taught a couple additional years after that. So today I look forward to talking about designing your resume and preparing to interview as you move into a teaching career. Share some of my experience and some experience of those that I work with, as well as some of my friends who are teachers and administrators. So let's go ahead and get started. So these are our outcomes for today. You know, we probably all have a resume or have thought about what a resume looks like. Many of us in Teacher Ready are second career teachers, so that means that we've held a job at some point. So I know we probably all know about resumes, but we're going to talk a little bit today about how to select the information and really the best information to include on our resume for a teaching career. Also ways to present that information, and really what the total package will look like in terms of discussing that verbally when you're in the interview process, as well as just thinking about what it means to include some items on your resume and to not include some items on your resume. So we'll talk a lot about that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about interviewing. And so some things to think about as you prepare for an interview for a teaching career, both from a personal standpoint, connecting to the school, and to really being very specific about how you present yourself and relate to the school that's offered you the interview, in addition to connecting with your professional knowledge and really how you relate that passion that you have for teaching and what that means specifically for the job in which you're interviewing. I should say, at any time, if you have questions, just please stop me and ask questions. I think we have a pretty good group here that will allow for us to do that without really having to wait to the end. But if you want to save your questions for the end, we can also take them there. So I think one of the best questions that I would share with college students that would ask me is, you know, they'd say, you know, what should I include on my resume? And I think that's a really great question, not so much in terms of identifying, again, those areas, specific areas to include, but really to try to identify what not to include as well. Because sometimes the more important answer to that question is making sure that I don't include things that really shouldn't be part of the resume. So as I thought about this in my experience and the experience I have not only getting teaching positions but also hiring educators, these are some very specific items or areas that I suggest include on one's resume. So, of course, your name and your contact information. A quick story about the contact information. I'm currently working in hiring folks to do some temporary work with us. And you know, on the resume for one of them, there was no contact information, and so, you know, it's often overlooked, if you will, and you know, we want to get everything else on there, but really make sure that you don't forget to add contact information, and whether it be a telephone number, email address, or a mailing address. All three probably would be the best thing. Also, the education that you've earned, the degrees, and the name of the college or the university. Always get questions about, you know, should I include my GPA on there? Should I include honors? Should I include clubs and organizations? It really depends, and I think this question is really tough in talking with second career teachers, because some of us have been out of college for many years, right? So I've been out of college for over 20 years now, and so I don't include those things on my Vita now. You know, the GPA is not on there. Clubs and organizations are not on there. But some honors are, and you know, the title of my honors thesis is on there. So I think it really depends where one is in their career and how far removed they are from earning a degree. Some people include dates on their education. For example, the span of time that you were in school, that is or is not relevant necessarily, as long as the degree earned is there. We're always, if they offer us a position, right, we're always going to have to send transcripts related to that, and it'll show the dates of the degree awarded. Certificates and special training, this is really important for us, right, as teachers, that we want to be able to show any certifications that we have, any special training that we had. I just had a friend go through special training. She's in her 20th year as an educator, and she showed a picture of her certificate today online. And so those things that we do to continuously show how we're engaged in our professional development are really important, especially any languages that we know. As we become a more diverse population, there are many school districts that we work with, especially that are bilingual and even multilingual in terms of the languages their students speak. So it's a very, very excellent skill to include on your resume, should you have it. And then professional experience, and I think this really goes back to that question of, you know, what to include and what we may not want to include. And so, you know, if you think about how any position relates to the work that you will be doing as a classroom teacher or as an educator or as a professional in the field of education, you would want to include that, okay? But there's also some things, and again, it depends how far we're out in our career, that we would include. So, for example, you know, I taught high school and I taught middle school for a few years. Well, then I went back to graduate school and taught, had a career in higher ed. So when I started moving through the progression in higher ed into my current career, you know, the experience that I had as a educator at K-12 or in consulting work that I was doing with nonprofits didn't necessarily fit anymore with that career path. So It's not that they weren't important, but they were certainly things that I could draw on that experience in a conversation or include it as part of a conversation that I was having at a later date. So in the selection process of the best information, those things might not necessarily make it. So additional areas that one might include or arguably should include on their resume is professional service. Same question, you know, what is this? What does it look like? What makes it professional? Well, these are things that we do. If we're in the school district already, it might be serving on a curriculum committee. It might be advising a student club. It might be a service that we do, helping the school site-based administration, anything like that. So again, if we're second career teachers or moving into this field, not having any education experience, professional service could still constitute those organization-based services that we provide. Here at Studer Education, we have a health and wellness committee. So, you know, if I would serve on that, I would put that as a professional service. And this gets into, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, you know, sometimes the hobbies or the interests that we have help make us unique and kind of stand apart from other candidates. So when we get into community service or volunteer activities, we might point out that that we're a big brother or big sister in the Boys and Girls Clubs. And so what that means really is that we have an opportunity to really distinguish ourselves from other candidates. So again, it's a selection of what would be the most connected service or volunteer activity that we could present that really relates to the work that we might do as an educator. Awards and then references. So references, you all probably have people in your back pocket that you could call for a professional reference. I just heard a admissions officer from Stanford talk last week, and she really talked about the importance of not just regurgitating information about one's skills or accomplishments, but really kind of defining who that person is as an individual and how he or she would excel in a classroom based on the skills that they had identified of you. And so, you know, I think that's a good, really nice rule of thumb in thinking about a reference. You know, it's someone who knows you in your work, but also can really translate what it means to know you in the environment that you're in or in the position that you're in, and be able to vision how your skills would translate into your work in education and with students. So when you're thinking about references, that would be my recommendation, to kind of think of someone like that. So I get a lot of slack around the office that my favorite font is Arial Narrow. And so my colleagues often laugh at me about that. So my resume, my Vita, is not in Arial Narrow. It's in a common font. And so what I mean by that is just regular Arial or Times New Roman, something like that. was just talking to Mandy as we were setting up for this webinar, and she said that when she was in college, she had to do a creative resume, and so it was not in a common font. So understanding that many of us are coming from very diverse backgrounds, you know, in communication, arts, or in the arts, or anything like that, you know, I say just use a common font, but if there's a font that's established in your field that would translate to education, that is kind of being an art teacher, or you know, being a music teacher or something similar, then by all means go with what's adapted in your field of study as it relates to that. But a general rule of thumb is to keep it simple, use a common format that's readable. The other parts of this, just align your format, keep it clean. White space is a great thing in presentation, keeping it simple. Also, the choice of words that you use if you're providing description underneath any of the work experience. Really, word choice is a common common failure among some of us in presenting text. So it's really important to focus on keeping the presentation simple, but also keeping the word choice in line with really the message you want to deliver. So choosing the best content, we've talked a lot about that already. I like less is more, and really focusing on quality. I thought about my first resume. I can remember doing it. I can remember doing it in college, for real, the first time, you know, as a college senior, which probably people would laugh at today, but that was my luxury. And I can remember the counselor telling me, you know, Julie, you really want to keep this to one page. And I thought, well, you know, I've done all of these things. Come on, Miss Counselor. And but she really honed in on the idea of less is more and to focus on quality. So what she had me do as a process was really brainstorm all of the things that I did that I thought, you know, were just fabulous. And then she worked with me really to choose those items and select the items that really told my story the best. And you know, that was over 20 years ago, and I still remember that, and I've really guided other juniors and seniors in college to make those same decisions in that way. So, you know, I had a one-page resume for a long time, and it wasn't really until I started as an assistant professor at the university that my resume grew into 2 pages, and then onward. But you know, I can't stress the idea of selecting the best information, focus on quality, and even if you're, you know, 30 years career in the military, you know, select out the items that tell your story the best, and then get it into a readable format that isn't overwhelming, and that you can fill in the gaps. You know, that's the beauty of it. And then use action verbs. I had a slide in here that listed all the Bloom's taxonomy. Really, just, you know, if you Google it, you can find them. But if you're listing actions related to the responsibilities that you have in a job, that's action verbs are the best way, the way to do it. So here's an example. And I don't necessarily expect that you'll be able to read the content on this, but really wanted to talk through, did we really hit the goals? Do we have a common font? Yes. Is it aligned? You know, if you look on down the left line and down where the words start, it's really an aligned format. It looks pretty clean, simple. You might argue not quality content, but the content that I selected, I think, is pretty good for what we're going to talk about. And then in one area, I do enumerate responsibilities, and that's the very first position under professional experience. So you can see the action verbs there: administer, analyze, interpret data, create. So you'll see all of those action verbs listed. I love this format. This is the format that I started out with when I was a college senior, and I just added a lot of different sections to it as my career progressed, but kept the same format over time. So now I kind of blow this up a little bit to talk more about the quality content. And here's the certifications listed. So hopefully all of you will complete the Teacher Ready program and earn your professional certification for the state of Florida. There are several ways to present this on your resume. One way is like this, where you just have the certifications listed, and then you put where your professional teaching license is held. And so if you're in Florida, you might just have Florida here. If you're like me and you earned your certification in one state, I earned mine initially in Pennsylvania. When I started teaching in Teach for America, I was in Arkansas in the Delta, and so my Pennsylvania certification transferred to Arkansas. Then I taught in Kentucky. So listing your professional teaching certification in that way on your vita or on your resume works. And then as you add additional certifications, for example, some of my colleagues here have Ed Leadership certification. So they would also add it in that location. Some of you might want to add the University of West Florida with your teaching certification, and that's fine and actually a great practice. And if you want to do that, one place to do that would be right up here where you have your degrees listed. So go ahead and stick it right there with the University of West Florida, the Teacher Ready program, professional certification from the state of Florida. That's a perfect place to also put that. So in the professional experience section that I included on here, I did a few different things for you. One is I wanted to show the enumeration of responsibilities using the action verbs. And so for my most recent position, the one I'm in currently, I put a section of those responsibilities here so that you can see just kind of how they're listed out. And so these are the things that I think would be important for identifying that if I was going to teach at a school, these are the things, or back at a university, these are the things that I think would relate to a position as an educator. And so this is why those specific items are included in this enumeration for you as an example. In the second one, where it's the professor and then the chair and associate professor, what I wanted to show you there is really how at the same institution I might have different roles and different responsibilities. And so I don't necessarily have to break those down into several different professional experiences listed, but what I can do is keep those, because they're the same institution, just different titles or different responsibilities, different positions. I can break those into two different lines. So the other thing that I did there, which is something that you may want to do if you're when you get into the classroom, especially if you're teaching elementary, where you have several different levels maybe that you're teaching, or at the high school level where you're teaching different courses, is you can list your courses like this. So I kind of just took a little bit, but you can see how I've distinguished between undergraduate and graduate. So here you might have, you know, 5th grade mathematics, well, probably not in 5th grade, 7th grade mathematics, and then 8th grade algebra 1. So it just gives you an example of how you might list the different sections that you're teaching, different areas that you're teaching. And then, again, the last two included only to show you that they're related to the work that I've done as an educator. And so it makes sense to include anything related to that, to being a teacher that that I would want someone to consider when they're looking at my vita or my resume. And as it relates to that, you know, I could have done a list of items here under a high school mathematics teacher, and if I were to include those, it would look very much like this list enumerated here, just related to what I did in the classroom. So all based out of action verbs. So moving into professional service, professional development, professional membership. So, you know, as teachers, often we get thrown into the fray of being an advisor for a student group or coaching a team, all of which I did as a teacher. So what I would do in that regard is to present those with dates so that from 1993 to 1995, you knew that I was the tennis coach at the high school, and you knew that I served as the freshman homecoming advisor, if that were an important thing that I would want to relay. So again, I think the important part of this is we all have, especially with our experiences as professionals and other careers, we all have a lot of professional experience development. We all might have professional memberships. It's really selecting those out that we think are going to tell our story the best. So as I look at, and so this kind of presents a non-example for you as the professional memberships, and that is, you know, I really have 3 on here that are unrelated to the work that I'm doing in my current position. One of them, however, this one that shows lifetime membership, and really this one of the American Political Science Association, one might look at those in totality with the rest of the professional experiences and say, you know, one is a lifetime member. This person's very engaged and committed to the work that the work the profession does in the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences. So lifetime membership shows a commitment. And then for the Political Science Association, if I were reviewing this resume, I would look back and say, why in the world would they be a member for 1 year? And then I would see that this person was the chair of an academic department that included political science. And so really it shows a commitment to her colleagues and the people that she works with during her tenure as their leader. And so, you know, some of the things might not make sense on its face, but as we think about it more and connect it back to our professional experience, then we're able to really communicate what it means about us as people as well. So those are things to think about, especially if you're looking for stuff to include on your resume. I'm hopeful that you don't have that problem. Okay, so here's another one. So I am, as I said, 20-some years out of 25, actually, and that's scary, out of college. And so as the awards that I've listed for you as the example were both from the university setting. So not real helpful 20-some years out, right? So what would be helpful is to be able to see things that were related to the work and the career. And so, but if I look at this, lots of teaching-related awards and others. And so if you think about the awards that you have, even in your profession, Making Way for Excellence Awards, anything associated to your work of service excellence in your employment or engagement excellence, great testament to the work that you do. It'd be great to include. So then I just thought about, you know, some of the questions that I get or some of the resumes that I see have an objective statement. And I think, wow, that's a lot of space to put an objective statement when I know their objective is to get hired on for this job because, one, they've told me in the cover letter, and two, they've applied for the position, right? So I'm not a big fan of objective statements, and so I just gave you a personal opinion, but I can't tell you that I've ever hired anyone either, and I've done quite a bit of hiring of educators where there's been an objective statement listed. Again, I think we have a great opportunity to present the objective statement in a cover letter and in our communication if it's a verbal communication. Very similar with having the word resume at the top of one's resume. Very similar related to, you know, the skills that we have, unless those skills are pretty specific, pretty significant. For example, if I receive a vita that looked like, or a resume that looked like the one that I presented, I know that that individual is proficient in Word, or at least know someone that's proficient in Word, that they will get up to speed if that's a requirement for the position. So, or if there are tests related. In either case, providing skills on one's resume, I think again it's something that can be communicated in a different location. What about the idea of all the part-time positions we have, or really Should I include every single position that I've ever had since I started working? And again, I think this goes back to the question of selecting the best content. So it's really an opportunity for you to brainstorm and list every award you've ever received, every professional development experience, every position, every certification, etc., and really choose and select those that best present you as a teaching candidate. The question about references, it's always just a great thing to say references will be provided upon request. And then what I find helpful is just to have a Word document with all their contact information and their names and their titles, how to reach them, ready to go, and then the relationship as well, how I know this person or why they're a professional reference. So, for example, in education, when I'm looking for an administrative job, I have a list of college administrators who I have a relationship with and have worked with, who I can call on to say, will you provide me a recommendation? Likewise, if I am ready for a teaching position, I can do the same. Mandy's on me to hurry up, so we need to move forward. So again, less is more. Consider the best content. So this is a 25-year veteran in teaching administration, and the question was, what do you look for in a resume of a new teaching candidate? And this is what she said. So I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and read that. We done? I missed the page. Okay, so your resume got you an interview, so now what? So these are some tips. My most favorite thing is to learn about the school and learn about the community for which you will be interviewing, and be very specific. I've gone as far as going to the website, scouring the website, of course, but printing off pictures of the different people that I know that I'm going to come in contact with, and on the back of those pictures write the information about them that I think is important to at least be able to, one, identify them when they walk into a room, and two, be able to have a conversation with them about what's important to them. That is, what they teach, where they earn their degree, how long they've been teaching, what clubs they're interested in. I can't tell you how cool that is to be able to be an administrator of when a candidate comes in and does that, as well as be on the giving side of that. It just lights up the person whom I come in contact with. As it relates to that, really think about how you and your experience ties into the school's mission and vision. And describe why you want to be at that school, what's exciting to you. The other thing that I think is kind of cool is to make sure you take copies of everything with you. You know, take your resume with you, a few copies, your cover letter, and if you get really excited, create a sample lesson plan. But if you're going to do that, make it specific to the grade level, to the content area, and if you can connect it to anything in the school, like if you can use the school name, you know, the Cougars, we're doing X, Y, Z, that's just pretty cool, and it shows the folks that you're interviewing with that you've done your homework. The other part of that, which is what we really hone in on in Teacher Ready, is make sure that if you're going to do the lesson plan, that you really have alignment of the standards, the learning outcomes, tasks, feedback strategies, everything that you learn in the program, to really hit home your expertise, even as a new teacher, and thinking about what it means to align standards, student learning outcomes, etc. So the other parts of that relate really to professional experience, and you know, for those of us that are coming into teaching as a second career, this is really an important piece of really selling ourselves as educators. So, you know, being a teacher is very different than some roles, I would say, in any other field that we do. I have a friend that just retired from the military service as an officer, and she started teaching at a local high school this year, or last year was her first year. And, you know, when she went in for her interview with the high school administration, you know, they knew that she was a military officer, retired military officer. And so what that meant for her, too, even though they knew this, is it really was incumbent for her to relate the experience that she had as an officer and what that meant in terms of training people that she worked with, in terms of leading the people that she worked with, in terms of being a team player, in terms of communicating professionalism, goals and standards, all of those things. And so she spent a lot of time relating her experience in the military to what that would mean as a high school science teacher. And when she did, and when she was able to communicate that very well, she earned a position. And so, you know, one of the beautiful things about many of us in Teacher Ready is that we have all of these great experiences that are in non-education professions. And that's what makes us such great teachers, is when we can relate that experience that we have to our kids and to what it means to lead a classroom and what it means to educate students. So if you do only one other thing beyond getting to know the school, take some time and really think about how your professional experience translates and relates to your work in the classroom. That really encompasses, I think, connecting knowledge with application. So there are going to be some very specific examples that you can incorporate when you're talking to the panel of interviewers or to the administrators. And when you do that, just the idea of not only regurgitating maybe what the standard is to show your knowledge of it, but really being able to apply that to what it means for a student in your classroom learning. When you can connect it to the individual student and what that means for his or her achievement, it's really powerful. And then the passion, I was online today and found this picture, so I wanted to include it in there. This is a the picture is of the Nile that this teacher built in her classroom, and so the sign on the wall that is unreadable says Ancient Egypt. And so she has her students learning about ancient Egypt and the impact of what it meant to live in a community on the Nile, and she's built this into her classroom. And so many of us might have portfolios that we've now created through our experience in Teacher Ready. Selecting one or two of the best items from that portfolio and taking them with us is just a really great thing to have at our fingertips during an interview. My question here, what kind of pie do you like? That's how I started my my interview for Teach for America. I walked in the room, and I wasn't the first one to go. There was probably 20 or 30 folks that were all trying to get a placement in Teach for America. So we were all in this classroom. And so as I heard people present, I wrote their names down so that I would have them when I went up in front of the class, and so I could ask them, you know, Mandy, what kind of pie do you like? You know, or Jeff, what kind of pie do you like? Logan, what kind of pie do you like? And of course, they were all yelling chocolate and Derby and coconut cream, but really the focus of that lesson was on pie, 3.14, and so we use rulers and pieces of string to estimate pi. But it was a really cool way to just engage folks and share my passion for mathematics. So just one example. And as it relates to that, you know, in the interview, at least have one question in your back pocket to ask the administrators or the teachers when you go in for the interview. And what that might look like is simply, you know, what's really going well, you know, at Carroll County High School. Or you know, if you had a brand new teacher come on board at Carroll County, what's the one thing that you might want him or her to be able to really connect with and engage in their first year? And so some kind of question like that says you're really interested, and you're also thinking about how you can help the team is kind of a cool question to have. I know we're getting close on time. I have, and I know we're taping this, so I have a couple of videos, and I think I'm gonna skip through those for now. They're only 3 minutes each, but I'm gonna skip through them. Here again, comments from an administrator about the interviewing process. Really encompassing a lot of what we talked about. And then I think we're into questions. This talks a little bit about, you know, we know you want to be a teacher, and if you have friends or family or folks that you work with that you think will make a difference in the classroom, boy, we need great teachers, and it'd be great if you can connect them with us or connect them with any alt-cert program so that they can get started. Does anybody have any questions? I've talked for way too long. Okay, maybe I should show you the videos then. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'll pop in the videos for you, and we'll talk a little bit hopefully you'll respond. We'll talk a little bit about them. So what you're getting ready to see are two of my colleagues going through a non-example in an interview. And so think about what works well in this interview and what doesn't work so well. Oh, this is the example. Sorry, I'm in the wrong one.
Hi, Janet. Hi, Eckler. Thank you for coming in this afternoon. We're doing just a few interviews, and I want to ask you a couple of questions, okay, that pertain to this particular position, and I want you to use the experiences that you've had so far in your profession. Okay? Okay? So, give me an example of a time things just were not going the way that you anticipated, either when you were working with a group or when you were working on a project on your own. And tell me, what did you do, and what was the outcome? Okay. Well, you know, things go pretty well for me, first of all, because I plan things. You know, I really think about going into any situation being on the top of my game. You know, and so I'm a really good planner. So I want to say that, you know, I'm a really good planner. Okay. So I guess, you know, if I could really think of something where I just had to kind of turn it around. You know, I remember one time when I was teaching in my class, and I got a student, you know, about 6 weeks into the semester, and he really didn't want to follow the rules and procedures in the class, so he became pretty disruptive, really disruptive, and we had everything going, you know, like I said, you know, I really like the plan, and I've got everything, I heard that, yeah. Everything laid out, so, you know, it just really disrupted the environment that I had with my kids, my students. So, you know, I really did take him aside and really talk to him, and then teach him the rules and procedures, and kind of move him through to get him, you know, to make sure that he moved into our way of thinking, because he came in thinking he was going to, like, run the room, and, you know, you can't just let kids come in and run the room and take control. So I really took control of that situation, and then it just really created a much better learning environment. So I'm really proud that I can take those types of difficult situations and turn them around. Did the student do well in your class after that? Oh yeah, my students do well. Like I said, you know, I mean, I plan things out, and I'm really organized. So for the most part, I don't have too many problems that surface, because I make sure I take care, dot my I's and cross my T's, to make sure so that I don't have as many problems. I know a lot of people do. I know a lot of people in high school, they have a lot of problems, but I've done a pretty good job, and I think that's one reason I want to be a leader, because I think, you know, that I really can help people, you know, do some of the things that I've done to plan and organize themselves to make it a much better place. Well, thank you very much for that information, and I appreciate you coming back. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, so does anybody want to comment on that? On what kind of they thought went well, if anything, or what they thought didn't go so well for for Janet, the interviewee in this case. All right. So one of the things that I noted on here for the non-example is that, one, Janet was very repetitive, and to the point where Dr. Larg even said, "I heard you say that." The second piece, beyond being repetitive, is she was very general. She didn't provide very many specifics, if at all, related to the improvements In fact, when Dr. Larg asked her, you know, did he turn his behavior around, and she said, "Oh yeah, all my students do well." And so our ability to avoid generalizations in this case, very, very important. I just got a note from another another friend of mine. Actually, she's a Teacher Ready alum that just got a new position at a high school here in town, teaching English and journalism. And what she says is, you know, when you're doing these interviews, and this relates to the non-example, is be prepared with your philosophy on classroom management. What we heard Janet do is really say, you know, we can't let kids take control of the room. And so I think the Heather Ann's note to really be prepared with our philosophy of classroom management would have served Janet very well there. And the other points that Heather Ann makes really are hit home in the second interview of the example interview, and that is, she says, you know, let the administrator or the interviewing team know that you're a team player. And so you're going to see this in this example interview here. The other thing that you'll see in here is very much how Janet is a team player and really works with to get a group of folks together for a solution.
Hello, Janet. Hi, Dr. Lawrence. It's good to see you again. I appreciate you coming back. Hey, thanks so much. For our second conversation. Yeah. I'm just going to ask one question, okay, this time, and I want you to really think about your experiences as an educator and respond with situations that you've experienced. Okay. Okay? All right. Can you give us an example of a time when things were just not going the way that you had intended or the way that you had planned, and you really needed to turn them around? And tell me about that situation. Tell me what you did to try to turn it around, and then also tell me about your outcome in that situation. And it could be when you were working with a group, or it could be an individual project, whichever you choose. Okay.
Yeah, you know, the thing that comes to my mind, as you know, I work at Montclair Elementary School. I'm in 3rd grade, and this past year, we really wanted to give kids more instructional time, and so there was a decision made where we wouldn't have recess at school, that we would put more instructional time into reading and math and science and take away the recess time. As teachers, as we began moving into that schedule, we realized pretty quickly how important that time was for our kids. And so one of the things that we did was, instead of just taking the problem to the principal, we decided, I pulled together a group of teachers, and I asked them to specifically talk about reasons why we needed students to have recess, why that decision or that policy needed to change. And so we came up with a list of reasons, and then I presented that to the principal and asked her if she wanted to meet with us and to talk more about it, but that not only did we recognize that as a problem, but here's why, and here are some particular solutions to that. The other thing that I thought was really important that we did is we didn't want to put her into a place where she had to agree on something long term. We said, let's try something for a couple of weeks, and if it works, then we go with it. If it doesn't work, we modify and change, and we will be more than willing to work with her so that it works for our kids and for us. And the result is, what we found is, as teachers, we took more ownership. We took ownership in that process, and so anytime we had problems, we took care of those problems as a team. And the greatest outcome is our kids really enjoy recess. They respect the time that they have there, and they come in the afternoon and when we're teaching math, and they're much better
again, just a great opportunity for Janet to share some specifics about how she's a team player and connected a problem, really focused on the solution and what was in the best interest for the kids. And so I hope that was helpful to you. So any questions? We're 1 minute over time. Any questions for me before you head out? There's a couple folks left on here. And so let me give you my contact information. So if you're like me and you prefer email, please feel free to give me an email. Also, if you're on Twitter, I tweet on the Who's Engaged blog. I also tweet on at Julie Kunselman and also on Studer Education. So any one of those would love for you to engage with me. And the What's Right in Education blog it's as so titled on the website. And so I invite you to follow that, join it, come visit us. On there, there's a lot of information related to the Who's Engaged book. Also just some really cool, exciting things happening in school districts, including Plan, Do, Study, Act out of the school district of Menominee Falls in Wisconsin. If you're interested in progress monitoring and measuring student achievement, it's a great resource. So if you don't have any other questions for me, we'll sign off. And I appreciate your all's attendance and hope that you found some of this information useful. Thank you.